Also, a huge shout out and congrats to the utilities for hosting a really beautiful end of the year banquet for all of their employees this year. Thank you to City Manager Ifo for taking on that request from them and being able to invite everyone, not just those being awarded. And I thought it was really beautiful. So thank you, Adrian, and your team for putting that together. Just on a couple of the notes we heard from here today, I had requested before, and it was through the TID, I guess, but I had made a request that we try to do some sort of private security for definitely the downtown area. But I saw the owner of Nessa's Cafe here today, who I contacted her over the weekend, and she did have a break-in. It could have been worse. It wasn't, thankfully, but she did have a break-in, and it's one of my favorite coffee shops. So, I think the reality is that for many reasons, but I think to bring attention to what blight does to a community is why I've been pushing so much MRAs and what an MRA could allow us to do, like provide potentially private security for areas like West Picacho, South Solano, El Paseo, and downtown. I think downtown obviously is maybe like the most visible one because it's where people are hanging out, there's events, but there are these other areas in our community that are experiencing this. And so I do want to thank our city manager and economic development for pushing that study forward. But I think if we are going to, look ahead into potentially helping these areas with some private security, more of those police eyes, which are helpful. I don't always trust surveillance equipment, but to be honest with you, crosstown boxing on West Picacho has been very thankful for the eye that has been out. Am I saying that right? The eye that has been out there for a while. And so, I think these are helpful, and they're only part of the puzzle, right? The reality is that this crime wave is not only unique to Las Cruces, it is nationwide, and it is happening because there is massive economic downturn, this global pandemic that impacted vulnerable people more than any of us know. And there's this huge income gap, and people don't have access to substance abuse facilities. And they just talked to us about MMC today, and it is a massive failure of the mental health system, and that's why we are here today. And putting more people in jail is in fact not actually going to solve the crime problem that we are seeing. But in connection to that, I think I'm glad people come here, but I also find it frustrating because I think there's a fundamental misunderstanding of what municipal government can do when the burden of proof to say that someone is dangerous is the DA. And often we sit here and we skirt around the issue, but there's a massive failure at the DA's office, and I think it's an important conversation that we need to have as a city. Perhaps our city manager and our mayor can go talk to them. I know that the fire department has gone and lobbied to the DA at one point, but it is a failure. It is broken and it needs to be adjusted. And I certainly hope that folks that come here are going to the DA's office as well, because it's quite frustrating. And I'd like to understand if there are issues between PD and the DA and how we can solve any of them if there are, Chief. But I really feel like that's there is bail, and then when we talk about bail reform, there is already language in bail reform that says it is to the discretion of the courts. That already exists, and so if it's broken at the DA's, and we really need to address it as a community. And I'll just say that, Mayor, I do want to tell you, thank you for sending over some of that data that you keep talking about from municipal court. I looked at it, I had my intern look at it, and I'm sorry I'm taking a long time, everyone. I want to read a couple of these, because Mayor, even though you and I don't often agree on things, I agree with you very much on this, that there's a problem here. And I just wanted to read a couple things.
It's going to snow tonight.
I know. There are 597 total cases from what the mayor has pulled. 23 people of all those cases is 23 people. Out of all those cases, about 5.3% of them are some sort of payment plan. About 7 out of 23 of those people, I think, are probably unhoused, as their address is 999 West Amador. So, you know, it's 7 out of 23 people only. The rest have different addresses that they have given. About 34% of those cases are codes related, which speaks to more of an education thing than an incarceration thing. Then the rest of those 56% are petty misdemeanors, which I think is where we see this problem right there, and it's and then about 35% of those cases have been deemed dismissed for incompetence. And I feel like that's where the biggest issue lies, is what happens then? What happens after someone is deemed incompetent to stand trial? Is the only solution the only option for them the streets? Is the only option? One of them on the list, one of these people is already deceased. And so I just feel like the only options for these folks are the street, jail, or death. And that kind of feels like a little bit of despair, because I think we could do better by people who are struggling. And so, Mayor, my ask to you is that you please put the municipal court judge on the agenda. I have a lot of questions for her, and I would really like to ask them directly. And I'd like to understand the system better so that we know what we can do as municipal government. What is our role? I'd like to be very clear that for us and for the public as to what we can and cannot do.
Absolutely, Councilor. And I know when you asked me, I reached out to Judge Goldbaum, and she accepted, but she asked if we could just wait till after the holidays. So it was not a problem, and I told her we're good with that. And I forgot to mention, as far as John Harris, he sent back, he says, we're trying to get it open. We need a psychiatrist. I have a call into one and text, and I'm waiting.
Sort of thing we're talking about implementing in downtown be a citywide approach, because I think that gathering of forces is absolutely what's needed. And I also want to say, you know, Chief Dominguez, you're the representative of PD right now, so I think we all turn and look at you and ask you to be the police. The best kind of policing, and the kind of policing that I think we are all consistently advocating for, community-based policing, building